When I started recording this podcast months ago, the goal was to spend time with people that have influenced my life on and off the bandstand. And I would say that today's guest has had more of a profound effect on me than he probably even realizes, in that musically, I just have so much respect for him, but I also consider him truly one of the dearest people that I've ever met, and just love spending time with him. And I've been so excited about today, about getting to chat with him and learn more about his journey and just see his happy face and talk with him. So it's a real pleasure to have my friend Wes McElmoyle on the podcast. Hey, Wes, how are you?
Brad, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this, bud.
I've been so excited about having some time to talk with you and just finding out everything there is to know about you. So, I mean, stuff that you'll want to talk about. So
I can legally talk about.
That's
correct.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're the most successful musician in the witness protection program, so that is pretty cool.
And that's on the hush hush.
Yeah. So don't tell anyone if you're listening. So yeah. So I was thinking about it a few minutes ago. The first question I want to ask you, and this is maybe it's a dumb question. I don't know. Do you consider yourself a violinist or a fiddle player?
Oh, you know what? I would consider myself a violinist first and foremost.
Yeah.
I was classically trained when I first started. That's, up until high school. Playing violin was what I did. I learned concertos, all that kind of stuff, and never really touched any of the modern day music type things. I was, kind of stuck in that box of only playing the classicals, which I loved. But yeah, it wasn't until later that I had to take all that classical training and throw it out the window and learn how to play some fiddle.
Sure. Do you consider yourself a fiddle player?
No,
ever?
No, I don't. I aspire to be. The early part of me up and coming, country music was the only other music that I knew that you could play on a violin or fiddle, other than the classicals. There wasn't, certain bands out there that were using violin unless it was country. So.
Yeah. I think the quote was Loretta Lynn said that a violinist is a fiddle player who can read music. I think that's a pretty funny term for it. I will say from my perspective, I consider you a violinist because you have a very lyrical approach to the way you play, and I could tell early on that it came from a trained, schooled place for you learning to play the instrument.
That's absolutely right. I started, luckily started very early.
How old were you?
Well, so I'll try to give you a Cliff Note story of how I got started. There was a movie when I was about 3 years old that I just fell in love with, and it's an early Disney film. It was called Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Sean Connery's in it. Sean Connery's about 19, 20 years old in the film, so that'll tell you how old it goes back. And in the movie, there's a bunch of little leprechauns jumping around playing the fiddle, playing Irish tunes. And I remember, as my dad tells me, he taught me how to hit rewind when it was over, and then taught me how to hit play. And that's how I entertained myself for hours at a time watching this movie over and over. And I begged my parents, I said, I want to do that. So they took me to a music store. I believe it was a Music and Arts here in Marietta, Georgia. And they said, he's too small to play the violin. We don't have anything that can fit him. And so they started me on Yamaha keyboard. So I did that for a couple years. Finally, they said, okay, well, he's been training his ear doing that. Let's get him into violin. And a wonderful woman by the name of Susan De Lorenz started teaching me Suzuki method violin. So I did that for a good while. She moved away when I was about 9. And that's when the serious training began. Susan was a very, very nurturing, sweet woman. And she was used to working with kids. And then at the age of 9, when she moved away, they gave me a new violin teacher by the name of Daniel Arshovsky. And he was about 20 years old, just got here from Russia, and things got pretty serious at that point with my learning and training. So,
wow, was he kicking your butt on a weekly basis in your lessons?
Absolutely,
yeah.
It was demanding perfection, which I'm grateful for. There was no coddling, there was no hey, we were close. It was no, that's wrong. That's wrong, and that's wrong. Do better.
I've had music teachers along the way that, like your first teacher, that were very nurturing, and then I had some that were incredibly intense, and both have, I would say, led me to where I am, and both served a very important purpose in my path of learning music. And I think both of them are valid and necessary for someone to teach you how to play.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I'm grateful for both of them. Susan for keeping my interest in it and, help pushing me along. And she just made me love it so much,
Yeah.
And Daniel for letting me know that, this is a special instrument. You have to treat it with respect. And it just all the focus that it took. And that was a real test in my wanting and continuation of learning the instrument.
Yeah.
So
what, when you were learning to play and starting to play classical music, do you remember some of the composers or some of the material you were playing?
Oh, of course. You had the Mozart, the Beethovens, you had Thais, Paganini, you had all these big composers. It was just, I'm not one to remember names of songs very well at all. And you can ask anybody I play with. I might play that song twice a week and still not know the name of it, but I know how it goes. It's just not how my brain works.
Yeah.
It was a wide selection of classical music. And after going through most of the Suzuki method with Suzuki learning with Daniel, after a while, he started getting into, single pieces, and he'd bring in stuff I'd never even heard of. So
yeah,
really just trying to challenge me and keep me going. So
I majored in classical percussion in college, and I would say even now, as a listener, as a consumer of music, I would say that probably 90% of my music listening is classical music, and I would say 50% of that is probably string quartet music.
Really?
I really, and of all periods, a lot of contemporary. Like I really like Bela Bartok. I like his string writing, and I just love the writing for the violin because it can be. A lot of people consider classical violin the Paganini, fast as lightning playing, but it's such a wonderful, slow sounding instrument as well. It's so melodic and so lyrical, especially in the low register. I just love the way it sounds.
Yeah, it can be. Playing a lot of classical music, you find playing up in third position, high on E string, and it can be, if you're not, just spot on with intonation, it can be very abrasive. It can be very insulting to the ear, and extremely frustrating as the player, because, this is a fretless instrument that you really have to be, your muscle memory's got to be spot on. If you're slightly out of tune on a string, you are in big trouble, except when you're playing, fun country gigs. Then, then you're just in the neighborhood of the note, which is okay. But, some of these, I love being able to improvise with the violin after the training that I received. I love being able to improvise and, stick, like you said, sometimes playing in the lower register of the instrument, just you get some very, very nice tones, deep sounds. It almost sounds like a voice. Mm-hmm. And so it's a good time.
Yeah, and I think if I've told you once, I've told you 100 times that you just play in tune so well. And and just really sing through the instrument. And I was curious about that because I didn't realize that you started out playing piano and then moved to the instrument. Do you attribute your intonation to your ear, or is it a lot of muscle memory, or is it a combination of the two?
It's definitely a combination of the two. However, I would say the ear training that I received by learning the notes on the keyboard, hearing everything, learning the spacing, half step, whole step, all that fun stuff. And you can visually just see it on the piano.
Yeah.
Made a big difference transitioning to violin. I think having just jumped into the violin, that could have been a little more difficult without the training beforehand. So,
Sure.
And thank goodness for both of my parents for not kicking me to the curb with all this squeaky music that I was making when I first started.
Pulling a cat through a chain link fence.
Oh my gosh, it was so bad.
Yeah. No, it's it can be the violin can be an offensive instrument.
It really
it's
can.
put in the wrong hands.
It really can. Even in the right hand, sometimes it just it can just be abrasive to, certain people.
No,
So,
I agree. It can be.
yeah. Play in front of a German Shepherd and see how they like it. I grew up, my poor German Shepherd growing up would give me at least 2 bad notes before she'd leave the room. So,
Oh, that's great. Did you do like middle school, high school orchestra in school?
I didn't. I did 1 year in orchestra, and I got kind of strong armed into it by the orchestra teacher. I was in 6th grade chorus. Oh, phenomenal teacher. Chris Whittington was my chorus teacher, and he made me just love learning, singing, harmonies, all that kind of stuff.
Where did you go to middle school?
I went to middle school here in Marietta at a place called Dodgen Middle School.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And Chris Whittington, God bless him, it was his first year, and we just gave him everything he could handle and then some. The poor guy. But we were a fun group. We loved it, and he was a lot of fun. But I mentioned to him that I played violin, and he said, "Well, are you in the orchestra?" I said, "No." And I brought it in one day, and I played a couple songs in the chorus room, and he brought over the orchestra teacher. Her name was Mrs. White, and she pretty much said, "You're in orchestra next year." I, didn't really want to argue. I said, "Okay." And it was all set up for me. And, it was kind of a disservice because some of the learning that I did early on, I never really learned method. I mean, you hear people that are classically trained talking about circle of fifths. We're in this key, so this note and this note are sharp, or this note and this note are flat, whatever. I don't know that stuff. I was never really taught that because I was, like you said, trained by ear and kind of learned by ear. I can read sheet music a little bit. And so she brought me over, and like I said, it was kind of a disservice because she said, "You don't have to do any of the book work. Just play and help out with the violin and viola sections," because she was a cellist. So she did the cello and the bass, stand-up bass, double bass. And I did that for 1 year, and I couldn't stand it. It wasn't anything other than I felt like we were all wasting each other's time. I don't want to elaborate on that and talk bad about anybody, but it was, I did not have fun.
Well,
I really just did not have fun. And I got out of there because, music's all about enjoyment. And if you're not having a good time, don't do it. Don't waste your time. Don't waste anybody else's time. And, she took a little offense to that. I went back to chorus, and Mr. Whittington brought me back right in, and I was so grateful for that. And I thoroughly enjoyed chorus. I did not enjoy the orchestra.
Well, and that's okay. And I'm there with you. I'm not going to speak poorly of someone I don't even know, but I will say that you not getting to come in and maybe learn the music theory behind it, her to say, "Hey, let's use this as an opportunity to get you up on reading music and understanding the nuts and bolts behind it." That didn't even happen. So I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that just as you starting out on the keyboard helped with your learning to play the violin, I'm sure there was a lot of benefit from you taking chorus and then being able to, because you're a great singer, and then you also understood that part of it that also then translates over to the instrument.
Well, let's be honest. I am not a great singer. You are a phenomenal singer.
Oh.
I can find a note. There's a difference between hearing you and me. There's a big step there. So
I've heard you.
But thank you.
Yeah. Well,
I really do believe, I would have benefited more by learning, why you play the notes learning the key signatures, all that kind of stuff. I just never got to it. So
that's okay.
But I will tell you, learning to read music a little bit, sight read music, definitely helped in chorus because you're seeing the jumps. You're going, and again, learning the half step, whole steps. That's a big thing when you finally kind of figure out the way the notes are spaced out and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I tell some of my students, if you know your alphabet, A through G, we're good.
We're good.
You can figure it out.
So. Yeah. And if you only know A through G, you're going to be a good drummer someday, right? Because that's about as far as a drummer can go, right? So let's go back a little bit. Tell me, is there music in your family other than you? Do your parents play or sing? Or
my father is he's a decent guitar player. He can play. He's got his, as we say, the 6-7 chords that you need to play any song that you could want to play. And he's a great singer too. He doesn't sing out in public or anything like that. But, growing up, he and my mother, I always remember taking road trips and we would all sing in the car and they would harmonize with each other and we'd sing in rounds with each other.
Oh, that's cool.
And my mother she's a wonderful, she can read music. She's a pianist. She can play piano very well. And she's a phenomenal singer as well. And not to mention they sat in on every single lesson that I had growing up. So they know more than the average bear that's just roaming the streets. So
yeah, well,
they were in every lesson that I was in and took notes, knew when something was going awry and could stop me when I was practicing at home and say, hey, remember, work on this section right here. And so they were a big part of me learning music too, because they were right there every single lesson and forcing me to practice every single day for at least 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's one thing. It's great to have parents that give you the opportunity to play or sing if you want to, but it's a whole other thing for them to actively support you and encourage you and hold you accountable to it, because ultimately those are the keys to the success.
100%. They kept me in it. I can't tell you how many times I got upset and, wanted to quit, and they said, hey, listen, we're committed. You're committed. Let's do this. We'll finish out the year. If you feel the same way, we'll talk then, but we're committed. And the dedication was not just on my part. It was on their part as well, on just supporting me and keeping me motivated. And, that was a big part of me staying with the instrument.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you, there was a million times that I just wanted to quit, and it was getting difficult. And they said, hey, hang tight. And next thing you know, I turn a corner, learn something new, get everything down pat, and they were all a big part of that. So
yeah. What kind of music were you hearing at your house? I heard you mention country music earlier. Did you hear that or? Man,
no, I really didn't. My parents were big into the 60s, 70s. My dad's a big Mamas and the Papas fan. He loves the Doobie Brothers, which I hear a little bit of violin in there. Mm-hmm. My mom is a Vanilla Fudge. What am I trying to think? What is it? Yeah, Vanilla Fudge. I can't remember her favorite band right now, but so we listened to music all the time. In the car, it was Fox 97 or so listen to the oldies, singing along, all the bebop stuff, and we always were into music. Even my sister, she's very talented too. She's an artist. She could do all the drawings, and she's actually a professional dance instructor. She teaches
Really?
tap jazz ballet. So her rhythm, she's got the rhythm and she has the elegance to dance and pull it off. So me not so much, but she got that aspect of it. So
Wow, man, that's a pretty stacked deck, that family of yours. There's a lot of talent in there.
It takes a village. It takes a whole big family, right?
That's it. When did you start playing gigs? How did that all transpire?
There's really awesome story behind that. Growing up until 18, I only would play like a family member's wedding, or I'd play at church every once in a while. I did a couple funerals that were, man, I wish I had never done growing up, but it was, family friends or something like that somebody had asked to do. But my first real gig, let me set this up real quick. And I'm forever, ever grateful for these two people. One is my sister, Julia May, and Lance Price.
Okay. Yeah.
A guy named Lance Price, who,
Yeah.
He used to play every Thursday at a bar down the street from my house called Suburban Tap. He was there every Thursday for about 6 years. And my sister used to go listen to him play all the time. And she invited me up. She was like, you got to come see this guy play guitar. He's phenomenal. I had just got back from college. I hadn't picked up my violin in, 5 years. As soon as I went off to college, I put the violin in the closet. I left state, went to school, came back, never even thought about really picking it up. And which is a shame because, I'd pick up my acoustic guitar and strum around a little bit, but there was really no, motive or dedication to that. It was just for fun. So she said, you need to come check this guy out at Suburban Tap. I said, okay. I show up. I listen to him play. I'm blown away. This guy, I've never heard a guitar player looping and playing lead guitar on an acoustic that made it sound like an electric guitar. He just blew me away. And I still am blown away by every gig I play with him. It's been, almost 15 years now. Still.
I think Lance was doing the looping thing very early on. And yeah, just a phenomenal guitar player. Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal guitar player. Great singer. And he was doing stuff that I was just, like I said, blown away. So after the second time going to see him, my sister and I, like I said, we were at a bar, had a couple drinks, and she says, I'll bet you $100 that you don't have the guts to get up there and play 2 songs with him. And, liquid courage. I said, yeah, I will. I'll embarrass myself for $100. I don't care. So she called Lance over on his break. And she says, I'm trying to get my brother to come up and play 2 songs with you. Would you let him do that? He said, absolutely, I would. So on a bar napkin, my sister wrote, Julia McElmoyle at the time, will pay Wes McElmoyle $100 if he gets up and plays 2 songs with Lance. So a couple weeks go by. I'm thinking about the $100. I'm broke. I could use $100. So I grab my almost 200-year-old violin out of the closet, take it into a bar, and we played. I'm trying to remember. We played 3 songs. We played Devil Went Down to Georgia. Mm-hmm. We played Ants Marching by Dave Matthews, and we played Dixieland Delight by Alabama. And I was so nervous. I don't remember a single note that I played. I don't know if I was even playing the same song he was, but I knew I was collecting $100 check as soon as we were done. Yeah. So I did that, went over to my sister, and everybody was walking by, patting me on the back. Hey, that was really good. And Lance walked up to me and he said, why don't you learn 5 more songs and come back next week? Here's my set list. And I, okay, I guess I did all right. I take a set list home. I learned, I think, 4 songs, showed up next week. I think he gave me $20 out of the tip jar. Played 4 songs, and then he goes, learn 4 more, 5 more. And it just kept progressing like that. Next thing you know, every Thursday, I'm getting up playing as many songs as I know with Lance. And it went from there. He saw something in me and kept bringing me back. And if it wasn't for him, I would not be gigging today. If it wasn't for the 2 of them, my sister specifically, but Lance showing his patience, because I'm sure it was horrible. I mean, I knew with my, like I said, when you are pitchy, when you're off, but he just had the patience and kept bringing me back, and it, got a little better and a little better. And finally today I'm tolerable.
I've played, well, I think I've played Suburban Tap with Lance before. I think I met him, gosh, it's been probably 20 years ago. I met him and played off and on with him with a few different things, played some country gigs. And then he had that project Ocean Street with Brian Stevens, and I played that with them for a while. And Lance is a great player, great singer. It's unbelievable. And what a cool way for him to bring you in kind of gradually instead of overwhelming you with the song list saying, all right, show up next week. This is what we're going to do. You just got to do it on your terms. You got to pick the tunes you wanted to do and then kind of slowly transitioned in. That's really cool.
Yeah, he was great about it, and just made me feel so welcome and was extremely encouraging, and just kept telling me, "Hey, dude, stick with it." And he had no reason to do that, no reason at all, but he did, and I'm forever grateful for it. So.
Yeah, no, that's really, really cool. That's really cool. And you guys have played a bunch of gigs together over the years, haven't you? You still do.
Still do. And you know what? I'm still a big fan of his.
Yeah. Still
am. Every time he plays, he does something that surprises me. Not unlike yourself, with Steve or many other people that I play with. It's I'm so grateful to have the circle of players that are around, and I'm honored. I can't believe we get to call it making a living doing that. It's crazy. It's crazy stupid.
It is. I agree completely, and it's what a gift it is to get to play with people that challenge and inspire you consistently. And you think you've heard everything that they know how to play, and then there's like, oh, there's that too. Okay, I didn't know you could do that. Yeah, it's really amazing.
Absolutely.
I have heard the evolution just in and I've gotten to play with you a lot over the years, which I'm really grateful for. And I've gotten to experience, and you were amazing to begin with, but the evolution that's happened just watching you play, man, you've just gotten better and better. And it just, you seem so relaxed and so confident when you play. It's really inspiring, man, to hear you play.
Well, knowing that I get to play with phenomenal people like yourself and everybody else, it's you guys can make anybody sound good. So that's part of the relaxation, and I'd say the other half is liquid courage. So, which helps.
It absolutely. What kind of do you deal with any sort of answer this as much as you want to? Internal struggles as a musician. Like my big one is like imposter syndrome. That's mine. I just struggle with it. The insecurity part of it. Do you struggle with that stuff?
Of course. I think every musician is kind of hoping for, the encouragement that we get from each other, which I mean, everybody in the music industry that I know is so supportive of each other. Mm-hmm. And that is huge. I think we all are a little insecure, 100%. You just want to feel like you want to be confident in front of people when you're playing, because I think your posture, your energy that you're sharing to a crowd makes a big difference. How they hear the music, how they feel the music. So you don't want to be up there, shaking like a leaf, but, I think, insecurity is probably the biggest thing that I deal with up there. And, a little that adds on to maybe anxiety every once in a while, feeling, oh no, what am I going to do? Oh, my big part in the song's coming up. What am I going to do? But as long as you're smiling, having a good time, I think the crowd reacts almost a little more to that than anything.
Yeah.
When you're in front of people.
Yeah. There's time where it's less about what you do and more about how you do it, and I think audiences are way more forgiving than we give them credit for. I think we just assume that if we make a mistake, people are going to be like, "Oh, I heard that," but they're there to support you,
Brad, I have to ask you this. After a gig, do you go home and you're like, yeah, I missed that spot there. I missed that spot in that song. I was a couple notes off on this one. I mean, do you replay gigs in your head when you're done?
I'll take it a step further and tell you that I go through periods where I will take a Zoom recorder and sit it on my amp and let it record all night, and then on the way home plug it in my car and listen back and say, oh, you're pushing when you go into the chorus, or you are sharp once you're getting into the heavy part of the song. Yeah, I way overthink that stuff, way too much.
You go back, watch the game film, and
you watch the game film. Yeah,
watch the game film like. And realize, hey, I missed a tackle here, and yeah.
I absolutely overthink it, probably way more than I should. And do you?
I've done it before, and you can beat yourself to death by doing it and really make yourself feel terrible by analyzing every little thing. What I've realized that I like to do now, if I do listen to a playback of something, not listen to the mistakes, but listen to where maybe there was a missed opportunity to do something different. Instead of saying, oh man, you blew it here. It's like, man, if you did this here, that could be really cool. It's one of those, instead of putting yourself down, trying to say, hey, what if you added a little bit here that can make it better? So
yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
Well, that's like a Bob Ross way of looking at a little happy little tree over here.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. You just need a big hairstyle. This is going to be audio only, but if you could have a big hairstyle, just to sell that happy little trees thing, man, that's great.
That's awesome.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the nuts and bolts. I don't talk a lot about rigs on here, but I do want to ask you about your rig, because I think you have a really fun and very cool, for lack of a better term, a very cool rig. And you get great fiddle tone, great violin tone, but you can kind of stretch out there and do some other stuff. What's under the hood? First of all, what kind of instrument, what electric violin are you playing?
Right now I'm using it's called a realist violin. It's made by David Gage. David Gage used to make, the realist pickups, and you can put them on a cello, a double bass, viola, violin. And they were little clip-ons. And then he got into making bridges that had the pickup in the bridge. And then he started, teamed up with somebody. I'm not familiar with the exact name, but they call themselves the Realist Violin. And currently I've got two models of a 5-string Realist violin, one with a active pickup and one with a passive. And I think that's the start of a good sound is a good violin with a good pickup. Going from there, it goes into a Fishman Aurora DI preamp, which I love. I've had for 12 years. I've used it off and on when I use my Yamaha silent violins, the little plastic all electric violin. I never got a chance to really use that preamp. But from there, all you need is a really good reverb and delay, just to try to fatten up the sound of the violin, make it sound a little bigger. Like we said earlier, violin sound can be abrasive sometimes. It's very high notes. It can get real squeaky, it can be really abrasive, really offensive to the ear. So the bigger and wider and fatter you can make that sound, I've found, is the key to it. So a good delay, a good reverb, I think is absolutely key for that. Now, I think what you were getting at is the fact that I have really bad ADD and I got to play with buttons and other fun stuff on my pedal board. It's just to entertain myself, and so I'll use a crybaby wall pedal, which is extremely frowned upon. Just ask some of the people I play with. And I don't know if I don't think I've had it since you've been around, but I've been experimenting with a octave generator, a POG.
Really?
So I've been, and one person who you wouldn't expect to like it does like it, and it makes it So it gives me an octave lower. So it actually sounds like kind of part of the orchestra playing with you. And I keep the octave above a little slightly below. So it sounds like I've got a little string section with me. And it tracks beautifully. There's no delay, anything like that, because that would drive me nuts. But yeah, I've been experimenting with that as well. I don't want to put a limitation on what a violin could sound like. I think that's just keeping everything in the box. You gotta take it out of the box. You gotta play with it,
Yeah. Well, and I think you approach the rig configuration that way, but I think you approach note choice, soloing, everything you play. You think outside the box with it, and it shows.
I'll tell you the favorite quote, my most favorite quote from a musician, is from David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, lead guitarist from Pink Floyd. Everybody always comments on how tasteful, how beautiful the tone of his solos. Now, you and I both know, I know you can play guitar. And I'm a terrible guitar player, but you and I are both capable of learning those solos. They seem impossible when you hear them because they're so beautiful that you're just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But they're so tasteful, they're easy. Now, his quote was, he says, I like to make my solos on my guitar like I was playing a wind instrument. He says, you have to take a breath. He says, you have to, put out a few notes, take a breath, restart. And he described it as, have you ever read a kid's short story that just has run-on sentences? And that sentences just run on. There's no period. There's no start of a new sentence. He says, you will lose everybody's attention if you just keep playing a million notes at a time without taking a breath. You got to make it into a sentence form and let everybody digest that sentence, start a new one. And I've taken that into my head every time anytime we are improving solos. I always think, okay, take a breath, start over. You just made a nice little sentence there. Take a breath, start over. Or else, you're going to lose everybody's interest. You can play a million notes for however many bars you want. It's not going to translate to people. They're going to say, wow, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Or they can take a breath and say, oh man, that was really nice. Yeah. So
yeah, I think there are a lot of instrumentalists that are also singers, and I like to hear singers play guitar solos because you can tell they understand that part of it where the space says as much as the note does, and just taking that moment to just take a collective breath before introducing the next thought or the next statement of the phrase you're making. Yeah, that's it's really powerful stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I as soon as I read that, because I've played with guys that the faster you play, the more notes you fit into a bar. Awesome, that was killer. But you don't want it to be. Sometimes you need it to be that. I mean, there are situations where you want that. Other times, sometimes you just need to let it breathe like a fine wine. You just got to let it take a breath.
Yeah, that's it. So I was going to ask you a question about influences, but I think in order for me to ask the question, I need to set it up by telling a quick story about one of the best evenings of my life and you were there. And that was the night that you and I, thanks to my pal Shannon Wickline, set us up and we got to go hang out with him and see Charlie Daniels at the Fox Theater. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that evening and just what that meant to you, getting to meet Charlie and also go on stage at the Fox and hold his fiddle before the show and play it.
Brad, first, big thanks to you and specifically Lisa for that. Your wonderful wife. Y'all were moving the next day. Before
That's right.
The night. So I mentioned to you, I said, hey, I know some guys at the Charlie Daniels band. I have never met Charlie Daniels. And you said, brother, we've got to fix that. And you go, let me talk to Lisa. We're moving to Louisiana the next day. I mean, not a big deal or anything. Yeah. Not a big deal at all. Maybe we can head out there with you. And you said something to Lisa. You called me right back. You were like, done and done. Call me when you get down to the Fox in Atlanta, Fox Theater. Oh my gosh. So the whole way down there, I'm thinking I'm going to get to, maybe get close, good seats, say hi. And when I arrive, you just said, walk around the side of the building. There's tour buses on the side of the building. I'm thinking, okay, are you standing beside the tour bus? And then you go to the last bus on the right and knock on the door. I'm thinking, okay, is somebody gonna? What's gonna happen then? Next thing I know, I'm on Charlie Daniels' tour bus, and you, myself, Lisa, and Shannon Wickline. Thank goodness for him getting us back there. And next thing I know, we're walking in the catacombs underneath the Fox. We're going down. All the bands are having dinner together. We sit down there. They're having catering food. I run into a member from Travis Tritt's band that was playing later on. Oh my gosh, Brad, this was a total dream. And we're standing, next thing you know, we're standing in a hallway, the three of us, your wife, me and you, and Charlie's just sitting in a chair talking to some people. And what blew me away more than meeting Charlie or anything, as soon as he looked at you, he said, "How you doing, young man? Come over here." I mean, he knew you immediately. And why aren't you working tonight? Why aren't you playing somewhere? And you guys just started talking, and I'm pretty much standing in your back pocket. And the two of you were just like old best friends talking. And I really got to hear, and it went quickly from music to family. How was your family? How was, and I was like, wow, this guy loves Brad. This guy is in love with Brad. And then you introduced me to him. I got to talk to him for a few minutes. And that was, ever since I was a child, the bar is set. Oh, are you as good as Charlie Daniels? No. I mean, anybody who ever talked about playing the violin or fiddle, specifically, Charlie Daniels is the man.
Yeah.
And you gave me that opportunity to meet him, shake his hand, talk. We got a picture together. Hung out in his tour bus. And like you said, oh my gosh, Brad, please tell me how this happened. Because all of a sudden you talked to a stage guy into letting us walk onto the stage. How did that, or was it Shannon?
Shannon was like, come on out here. And so at the time, when Charlie was touring, he had this huge road case on stage, and it would flip open, and he had a tech that was basically on stage with him, and they would line up his fiddles back there. And Shannon was like, come on back here. And for everyone listening, you have to just imagine this moment where we're standing here and Shannon's like, pick one up, play it. Charlie won't care. And Wes is like, hell no, I'm not doing it. And he's like, seriously, man, just pick it up.
Don't set me up for failure, Shannon. I'm going to get tackled by a security guard or something, is what I was thinking.
And I just remember Shannon saying, if we were not playing at a show like this with other bands, he would absolutely have you sit in with us tonight and play with him. And just briefly, let me just quickly say my experience with him. We used to play this charity event in Tampa, Florida every year, and that's how we got to know him, and like on a first name basis. And they always had this event at one of the evenings, and we would always play for the dinner. And 5 feet in front of us, Charlie sat and ate his dinner and listened to us play. And he was the most supportive audience member I've ever played for. He clapped and cheered after every song, and as soon as we would finish playing, he would make a beeline to us, give us a hug, ask us how we've been doing, the whole deal. Everything that you hear about Charlie Daniels, that you saw about him on social media, that's the way he lived his life. He was that way all the time, and I just can't say enough for the person that he was to me and the person he was to you when you got to meet him. He's just a sweetheart.
Well, it was extremely obvious when I saw you guys talking together how much respect and admiration he had for you. And I could see you looking right back at him with the exact same. And that made it even more special to me. It wasn't, it wasn't paying to get backstage. It wasn't buying an extra ticket. It wasn't winning something from a radio station. It was more of, this is my friend Wes. This is my friend Charlie. Charlie, this is my friend Wes. And it made it so much more special for me, just being able to have that moment. And you know what, Brad? I would have never have had the opportunity if it wasn't for you and Shannon and your lovely wife, Lisa. And unfortunately, we lost Charlie the next year.
Yeah, we did.
And it was one of those things where I said, wow, that was just made to happen. That was me getting that chance. And it was a big thanks to you. And I'm extremely grateful for it. So
well,
that is a core memory I will take to my deathbed.
Well,
is that entire night.
I will too. It was, I know it had a profound effect on you because of the influence that he has had on you as a musician. Mm-hmm. But for me, getting to experience that evening with you was a highlight for me that I'll take with me forever. I want you to know that.
I'm so grateful. Like I said, that was an amazing night, an amazing experience, and just something I will take with me forever.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Brad, I don't know if you remember this. I got to talk to a couple of the other band members that were playing later that evening with Travis Tritt. Growing up, I lived off Murdoch Road in Marietta, and the same Murdoch Road that I lived off of, so did Travis Tritt. His father was my school bus driver from grades 1 through 8.
That's right. I do remember this.
And yeah. I ran into his granddaughter who was singing, who opened up for Charlie that evening, and said, your granddad drove me to school every day for 8 years. And we actually I remember as kids in the neighborhood, we were 2 neighborhoods away. We actually, I was 5 or 6 or 7 of us hopped on our little bicycles and rode over to their house. And his lovely wife, served us lemonade on the front porch, and we got to talking. And still at that time, I didn't know who Travis Tritt was. We just thought Mr. Tritt was one of the greatest guys ever. And I remember I was in 5th grade. I was playing a Oktoberfest at Murdoch Elementary. And Mr. Tritt walked by and, hey, keep it up, kid. You're doing well. Keep it up. And walked off. And my dad was like, who was that? I said, that's my school bus driver. He goes, oh, okay. It was later that week. My dad picked me up from the bus stop, and Mr. Tritt was not driving. And he said, well, where's Mr. Tritt? I said, well, his son is getting an award tonight, a CMA, something. And I was a little kid. I didn't know what the Country Music Awards were. I said, he's visiting his son. He's doing a CMA something. And later that night on the CMAs, we see Travis Tritt receiving an award.
Oh, my God.
And they show in the crowd, Mr. Tritt. I'm like, hey, that's Mr. Tritt. That's my bus driver. So
that
crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Small world. And
small world, man.
But yeah.
We saw Travis over the summer, last summer, because Wendell Cox, guitar player, friend, was he plays with Travis, and
Wendell's amazing.
Yeah, Wendell is. We did the jam together.
I've jammed with Wendell a couple times with you, and what a great guy, first of all. But what a phenomenal guitar player.
Phenomenal player. Yeah, I'll say Travis. He sounds as good as I've ever heard him. He is still just out there doing it. I can't believe how good he sounds. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, he's a true professional, just grinding it out there. He's doing well.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if we didn't take a moment to speak about our pal, Mr. Steve Ward. And
as you like to say, Stephen Tiberius Ward.
Stephen Tiberius Ward.
What a great guy.
You guys met. Did your dad play tennis with him? Is that right?
Yeah, he lost a bet somehow. So, Brad, Steve and my father played tennis together. And my dad hounded him every time they saw, my son plays violin. And if Steve had $1 for every time somebody came up and said, my kid plays an instrument, he would, he'd be a millionaire. Absolutely. He'd be a millionaire. I mean, how that works. And so finally my dad trapped him. Was like, get I've got a CD. Hop in the car. I want you to hear this. And it was a song I did with Lance Price, an original tune. And Lance gave me some room to play some different 3-part string parts on there. So I stacked some fiddle tracks. And Steve took a listen to that, said, "What's your kid's name again?" And he said his name's Wesley. And Steve goes, "He hangs out at Montana's, doesn't he?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll have a chat with him. Thanks for playing that for me." And so anyway, I believe it was a few weeks later, I got done with the gig, pulled up into Montana's, and I'm not sure who Steve was playing with outside, but Steve said, "Do you have your stuff with you?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Plug in real quick. Give me a line." So I stood behind our amazing turf stage.
The turf stage.
Yes. Turf stage, which is just a boat ramp. Oh, no, a little boat trailer.
Boat trailer with artificial grass, the turf on it. Yeah.
That when you play on there for more than a couple hours, you get seasick because it rocks back and forth.
You do need a Dramamine.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. Or some kind of safety harness. But anyway, I remember playing 3 or 4 songs with him from behind the stage, and he looked at me. He goes, "Don't go anywhere. I'll talk to you in a minute." And oh my gosh, what a blessing! And I mean, it was on from there. He came up, got my information. I think it was a few days later. He said, "Are you open this date, this date, this date?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you have a set list, or do you want to get together and work on anything?" He said, "No, just show up." And it was on from there. It was a great thing, up until that point, I was only playing with, of course, Lance Price and a guy named Chip Jones, who I love to death. And it was great. But, as an accompanist, I can't go out and get my own, solo gigs just playing violin. No one really kind of wants to hear that. So as an accompanist, you really kind of rely on having a band leader, a guitar front guy, or, singer, blah, 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 blah. And when I got to start playing with Steve, everything just took off, I learned a lot. I met a lot of amazing people like yourself. I'm forever grateful for that. And it's just, Steve, what an amazing guy he is. He is so driven and loves what he does with so much passion. And the guy's work ethic, as you know, he's the first one to show up and he's the last one to leave 2 hours after everybody's already gone.
Yeah. And he wants everything he does to be the best that it can be, but is never for a second competitive about it. It's always from a place of support.
No, always.
And it's always optimism, just love and laughs. And it's the most relaxed gig you're ever going to play in your life.
No pressure. He sets everything up for you. You walk. I feel like I'm playing Madison Square Garden every time I play with him because I show up. He has a microphone stand for you, even though he knows you got your own. He's got your monitor set up just the way you like it.
Just the best monitor mix in the world.
Oh my gosh, his ear is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and and I was going to say that too. I'm thankful to Steve for so many things because, like you, I've learned so much from him, just in every way, musically, sound, just the whole deal. But I'm grateful that because of Steve, I got to meet you. And you would sit in with us from time to time when we would play at Montana's. And man, every time I was just like, I just can't get enough of the way that this guy's playing the fiddle. Yeah. I just can't get enough of it.
The feeling's mutual. I was feeding off of your vocals. I mean, I had never really heard a professional singer until getting to play with you. I mean, I've played wedding bands where, the front ladies and some of the other lead singers are just amazing. But to play in a band where we're using wedges and not in-ears and you're just belting it out like that, it made me want to be so much better. And that's what Steve does. He surrounds himself with people that are just driven and just killing it. It's amazing. It's amazing all the people that I've met through him that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. Tell me about this project that you guys are doing now with it's you and Steve and a singer.
Her name is Heaven Lee Broussard. And Brad, your eyes are going to pop out of your head when you hear her sing. This young lady is so just, she's got that power behind her voice, the soul, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just their jaw drop as soon as she starts singing. And she'll hit runs that I would have never, if you gave me 20 different times to come up with the lick, it wouldn't even be in there. And she just comes up with it all the time. And we're having a lot of fun getting to play some different kind of tunes, getting to play some of that girl country stuff, the chick rock. And it's a lot of fun. She's really doing really awesome right now. So where Steve found her at a gig that he was playing, and the ladies that were there watching Steve said, "You need to hear this waitress over here. She's singing harmonies with you, and they're phenomenal." So Steve got to talking with her, listened to a couple of her original tunes, which, oh my gosh, this girl can write. This girl can write some songs, very, very lyrically driven. And it's she's going to be something very special, very special. I just feel happy to be a part of it at this time, because she'll move on. She'll be a lot bigger than we all could be. So,
man, well, I'm hoping to be in Atlanta very soon, and I'm hopeful that we can find a very wonderful excuse to play some music. And I'd like to hear her sing, and maybe play and sing a little bit together. That'd be pretty fun.
Don't threaten me with a good time, sir.
Man, that sounds great, man. Well, Wes, I just love you to death, man. I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me today.
Brad, what an honor. I when you called me and asked me to do this, my initial reaction was absolutely. I'd love to sit and talk with you for an hour. And then I got to thinking, I was like, what do I have to say that's any interest to anybody? But appreciate you just chatting with me and making me feel calm and collected during all this. And I really appreciate the opportunity to just sit and talk with you, man.
Well,
I'm a huge fan of yours. I love you. I love your family. What a wonderful family. Your son Skylar is just kicking butt at school. Sophia is just growing up way too fast.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have forever love for your wife for, always being so kind to me. And in the stressful time of moving, found time so y'all could escort me to meet my hero. And I'm forever grateful for that.
Well, we just love you to death, and we always have, and we always will, man. And it's just great to see your face and talk to you and catch up a little bit. And you guys check Wes out. Go hear him play. I promise you will be blown away, like everyone is that gets to hear him. He's shaking his head right now. He's not being he's being too modest. He's so good. So Wesley, I love you, man. Thanks so much. And
Brad, I love you too, brother.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Sounds great, man. Be well.
Thanks for listening to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm your host, Brad Williams. The show's theme is called Placation and was written by Mark Mundy. Drop me a line at the email address, thebandwichtapes@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to receive new episodes of the podcast. And while you're at it, please tell someone else about the show. Thanks for listening.